So much for being here tonight. My name is Mitch Boersma. I'm the Executive Vice President here at the Catholic Information Center, and I have the honor of welcoming all of you here tonight to join us in person, as well as those of you tuning in to the live stream for what promises to be a very fruitful conversation about the evolving role of higher education in our society, with a particular focus on how we as Catholics can play a part in preserving storied higher ed institutions and building new ones. I jumped at the idea of this event when Kathleen first proposed it, as someone with a feet in both camps of this question of continuing education and formation, particularly in the Catholic world. For one, I am a proud alumnus of the Catholic University of America, where I received my master's degree in moral theology back in 2012. In fact, it was a really anxious time in my life. I had determined a few months earlier that I really wasn't made of the tough stuff to go and finish the degree and get a PhD the way all of my colleagues were. And so I was finishing up my master's degree, trying to figure out what my next move would be. But as Providence would have it, on the very same day I completed my comprehensive exam, I received a call from Father Arnie Panula here at the CIC asking if I was interested in interviewing for a job. So it's about the only place in the city outside the Chancery where that new credential could have come into value. So I am living proof that even the most obscure degrees from a university can open up doors to a really fruitful career if the Lord wills it so. Now, on the other hand, the core problem that Father Arnie and I set out to address after he hired me when we launched the Leonine Forum here at the CIC was precisely a recognition that this city in particular is filled with incredibly bright, driven, faithful young professionals with degrees at some of the most prestigious universities around the world. These are universities premised on forming students' minds, bodies, and souls, and yet these folks that we were encountering every day at the CIC had never once been exposed to the treasure trove of Catholic social teaching, that the church had been thinking about these issues for 2,000 years and had answers to sort of those questions about what it meant to be and flourish as a human person. So we set up the Leonine Forum as one of these alternative modes of forming and credentialing and connecting emerging Catholics, much in the way that universities do. So all of that to say that I think that we as Catholics here in the room tonight have an opportunity to play a unique role in both buttressing the traditional university system, but also a role in being on that cutting edge of spiritual entrepreneurship when it comes to thinking about how higher ed and how these continuing modes of education can continue to support alternative pathways for professionals and for all of us to continue to learn about and discover the true, the good, and the beautiful. And so there is really no one better to lead us in these conversations tonight than our two speakers. We'll begin tonight by hearing from Kathleen deLaski, the author of the newly released Who Needs College Anymore? Imagining a Future Where Degrees Don't Matter. Kathleen spent 20 years as a TV and then digital journalist, including time at the ABC News White House correspondent. This period included a stint in government as the chief Pentagon spokesperson. She then turned her focus to education finance and education reform. She has been involved with founding several nonprofits, including the Education Design Lab, which works with colleges to create shorter, more affordable pathways for learners to achieve their economic goals. Stepping down after a decade as the CEO of the lab, Kathleen now serves as the board chair and is on the board of the Credential Engine. She spends time as a senior advisor to the Project on Workforce at Harvard University and teaches human-centered design and higher ed reform as an adjunct professor in the Honors College at George Mason University, where she also serves as an appointee to the Board of Visitors. Kathleen has long played a dual role as a philanthropist, managing the deLaski Family Foundation, which has for 25 years been a grant maker in education reform, well-being, sustainable agriculture, and the arts. Kathleen and her husband Edward have 2 grown children and are members of St. John the Beloved Parish in Arlington Diocese. After we hear from Kathleen, we'll hear from Dr. Peter Kilpatrick, President of the Catholic University of America. Dr. Kilpatrick was appointed president in March of 2022 and took the office in July of 2022. Trained as a chemical engineer, he served on the faculties of North Carolina State University, the University of Notre Dame as Dean of Engineering, and most recently as Chief Academic Officer of the Illinois Institute of Technology. He's the author of more than 100 refereed journal articles and holds or shares 12 patents. Dr. Kilpatrick is an adult convert to Catholicism, served for nearly a decade as an RCIA catechist at his home parish in North Carolina, to which he still belongs, and has lectured widely on topics of interest for adult Catholics, including Catholic social teaching, what makes a university Catholic, Marian apparitions and miracles, and the really tough questions in Catholicism. He and his wife Nancy have 4 grown children and 3 grandchildren. After Dr. Kilpatrick's response, I'll kick us off with a few questions before opening it up to the audience. With that, please join me in welcoming both of our speakers and Kathleen here to the podium.
Hello, thank you so much for coming out, and thank you to everyone on live stream. I know we have some people from Tucson, Arizona, where Catholic University has a campus. Okay, I'm not here to talk you out of sending your children to Catholic University. Don't worry, Dr. Kilpatrick, that is not my aim. I am obviously a huge beneficiary of college, of grad school, as have many people in my family. I didn't write this book because I was, one of those like entrepreneurs like Peter Thiel or some of the ones who say, we'll pay you money to go out and have a startup instead of going to college. No, that's not what I'm about. The organization that I started in 2013 was really founded on the notion that to try to support the people who were not able to go to college. And, I've spent a lot of time with a lot of different people over the years for whom the system isn't working. And I think the question is, how do we support them? And I'll get into that a little bit in the slides. So I just wanted to put that frame up front and assure you that I am pro-college. It's my view is yes and, not either or. So I'll start out by describing, there is out in the land, we're here to talk about Catholic colleges in the discussion period, but I'm going to give you, this is sort of the description that I give from a more secular perspective of the overall picture. But I, as a Catholic, very much have been really interested in the fact that these trends, which is college enrollment overall falling over the past decade, are not being experienced by many Catholic colleges. Au contraire, the Catholic colleges are doing very well. And so it's the bucking the trend aspect of this that I'm most interested in, and we'll get into that. But the reason that, there are many reasons that college enrollment is falling. I have a slide that kind of looks at the reasons sort of down the left. What we really have are kind of these two conflicting narratives that are causing a lot of stress among families. Maybe not in your house, maybe not in the Washington D.C. area, where the debt issue. We're a wealthy area. We have a lot of. I think we have the highest number of dual income households in the country. We have the highest number, at least in Northern Virginia, the highest number of graduate degrees. So it's not a very good area to be asking the question, can you afford college? People are just making it happen. In fact, one of the young men that I interview, Patrick, in the book, he is from Northern Virginia, and he was supposed to be on the college track. His parents were both college educated, and his issue was that he didn't have good grades, and he didn't feel like he had an academic identity. And so he was in high school. He went to Chantilly High, some of you know it, and he was getting the industry certifications, and because he liked working with his hands, and he was getting them in areas like data security. And he was, he finished high school, and he applied to one college, Virginia Tech, which you all know he didn't get in. And so he thought, well, I'll go to community college. But he put up his resume on LinkedIn in the summer before going to community college. And he got a call from a headhunter from AWS, and they saw the industry certifications that he had gotten. He was 18 years old, and they said, we'd love to, talk to you about, coming to work for us at AWS. So he gets a job in the data security center making, it was a not part-time, but like a temporary job that then turned into a full-time job, $63,000 a year he was making at the beginning. And then he kept getting promotions. He then thought, oh, well, let me go try to get a job at a software company, because he didn't love data security. By the time I interviewed him, he's 23 years old. He's a software engineer, and he's making six figures, well over initial six figures. And he said, I was taking community college classes for a little while, but then, I just sort of stopped because it just seemed kind of pointless. Like, I don't even think if I finished my degree, I would put it on my resume, because it's not as important as all of the, the different certifications and my job experience. So, I just described Patrick to you as an example of a different kind of pathway that some young people have been almost kind of like intercepted into on their way to college. But in many communities, there aren't the kind of job, like we have, fantastic job opportunities in this area. And so, the question is, for people who have heard that college is too expensive, it may not be true, and I'm sure that, President Kilpatrick will talk about, the difference between actual price and sticker price. But for many people, even a small amount of debt is scary. And, when you talk to Gen Z young people, I went around the country interviewing some of them and did a lot of, phone interviews. And, concern about debt was the number one thing. But, there's also, and I mentioned academic identity, particularly after COVID, there was, GPAs just sank, chronic absenteeism, this became a real issue. But also this idea that particularly among young men, and I interviewed several of them that just said, I don't really can't imagine sitting in a classroom for another 4 years. I want to work with my hands. And so, those folks get sent to trade school often, and what's interesting now that I'm seeing is, as we're moving away from this idea that everybody has to go to, because we have had a college for all mantra for the past 30 years. I was part of that movement, just going back to this slide, in this period of the, 2000 to 2010, I was working in the college access movement, and, I was like all caught up in the, everyone should have that opportunity to escape zip code destiny and have the opportunity to go to college, right? So there were a lot of charters when the charter school movement was born. 45% of the kids in our city go to charter schools now, and this was all because we were trying to set them up for college, right? And it's a wonderful movement, but now the statistics have demonstrated that while there may be higher college enrollment, that 40% of all people who don't go to college, who start college don't finish. And I think when you compound that with the overall numbers who don't even start a degree, I think a lot of people in this movement started to feel like we have to offer a yes and approach. We need more opportunities. We can't keep telling everyone to try to fit into this box when it's not working out for them. And the fact is that 62% of people do not have, American adults do not have a 4-year degree, and yet we're telling them, that they have to have college to get a good job. And so these are the kind of the reasons why I wrote the book. And what I offer when I say who needs college anymore, right? The book is based on a human-centered design approach, which looks at the needs of users and asks the question, okay, whose needs are not being met and how could they be met better? Like if college was thought of as more of an umbrella for a number of products, like who would get served, how could we serve more of the people that aren't making it through? Well, so when I talk to people about who does need college anymore or still, right? It's, there's the data, the research demonstrates that like these categories of people absolutely, are the, kind of the poster people of the college degree. And, the class transport is like when I think of I start the book with a relative of mine who was kind of like an early class transporter example of somebody for whom college absolutely was a huge benefit. This is my great-grandfather times 7, who he was the son of an indentured servant who came over from England. He was a immigrant in 1630, and his the father had 11 children, and one of them somehow, the indentured servant, he managed to get his kid into Harvard, which was a brand new university, brand new college, was only training ministers, right, in this day and age. And so John Wise, my great-grandfather times 7, was able to go to Harvard and pull his family from, indentured servitude to a position of prominence in one generation. And, in just looking at, there's a lot written about him because he became famous later. You can tell that it was the college degree, that was his transport ticket. So, right, like many American families have a story like that in their genealogy or in their past, right? That's my story, and you probably have one too. And that really set the college degree on a trajectory of being, this kind of iconic ticket to the American dream. And so that is still going on today, and the data bears that out. That is still economic mobility from one class to another is the number one, reason why I tell people absolutely you should still get the full degree. I mean, as opposed to some portion of it. And then I won't go through each of these, but their license to workers is basically for many decades to come. I think there will be careers where you absolutely have to get a license, and that license is going to require a degree. I mean, I did learn in my research that you can become a lawyer in California without either a bachelor's or a law degree, but it's very difficult, right? It's like a circuitous route, and you can apprentice. But everywhere else in America, to be a lawyer, you have to get at least a law degree, if not a college degree. And there are many fields like that. So I certainly tell any young person or family that if you want these kinds of licensed degrees, nurse, doctor, educator, even some forms of engineer, you absolutely need a degree. And then I wanted to mention this longing to belongers section because that's where I think the Catholic secret sauce comes into play, right? Which is that when you consider what you get in the full degree experience, there's no way to replace that with just-in-time certificates or certifications if you're offering something that everybody recognizes is unique and a value proposition. And that's, I'm sure that President Kilpatrick will talk about this, so I won't go into it, but that's where the Catholic universities and colleges have a real advantage. And then I'll just briefly mention, who can afford to skip a full degree. Certainly older, people who are outside the age of a traditional college, I always say to them when they ask, and my own daughter was one of these folks, she didn't get a degree, our daughter, she didn't get a degree when she was younger. And, when it came time to start thinking about being a career switcher, I said, look at a boot camp, $3,700 is what she paid. And we helped her pay it for a digital marketing boot camp. And that did parlay her into the field. But she was, 27, 28 years old. She wasn't going to going to college with the 18-year-olds didn't make a lot of sense. So, there are situations like that. And then, some people are, financially constrained and very motivated DIYers. I interview a guy in the book who fits that bill. I won't tell that story now for time, but prepackaged career starters are people who are going into apprenticeships, and the nation right now is very focused on trying to get more apprenticeships, and not just in the trades, but in fields like finance and insurance and green energy and all kinds of manufacturing. And that, I believe those will increase, and that is a wonderful way to begin a career without a degree. And then the undecided maybe laters are folks who, really, it may not be worth it for them if they're very financially constrained and they don't really have a plan or know what they want to do. I say, try community college so that you can gain some experience and some career exposure. But, going into debt when, we lose the most people after the first year, it is a high risk. So, those are people where I, tell them to look very carefully. And then lastly, I'll just say that I am very excited. I mean, the book, it sounds like maybe maybe it's gloom and doom about this wonderful ticket to the American dream that we've had. But no, I am really excited about this moment because what I see colleges doing to kind of rise up and meet the moment, particularly community colleges. My organization, the Education Design Lab, is working with 100 community colleges right now to create this sort of stepladder approach, offering shorter-term certificates and industry certifications. And it's really kind of exciting. And, I kind of saved this for last. We actually have a ticking up now of college enrollment. And the as of like 2024, and it's not getting back to that 2010 level, but it's in some ways, in some parts of the field, some parts of enrollment are getting back to like pre-COVID levels, and the driver, the fast growing areas are the ones I show up here. So I think that's what you're going to see is college is expanding its offerings. And that's a good thing. And the degree will still be available for those who want it. And, and I think our role as Catholics, I think I wanted to end on this. When you think about if college is supposed to be a public good and 62% of Americans don't have a four-year degree, how do we think about our role in expanding access to an array of college, products, to put that, not to put a business frame on it, but that's kind of how I think about the offerings. How do we offer all the things that might work and qualify as college to give the level of funding and the level of prestige that the degree currently has? Thank you.
Patrick? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mitch. So I thought Kathleen and I would probably disagree on more things than I think we are going to end up disagreeing on. It is the case that our approach to educating young people and helping them create a good life for themselves should be both and. I'm a firm believer in college, having done it for my entire career and seeing the real fruits of it. But I recognize that many colleges sort of fail students. And I think that could actually be a pretty interesting topic for discussion. Why do colleges and universities fail to get students through? So for example, we talk a lot about community colleges. So, the nationwide average for graduation rate for community colleges is pitifully low. And the question is, why is that? And what can be done about that? But in any case, the points that clearly we agree upon. Higher education can and should be a means of social mobility. It should further social justice. It should be for the common good of our society. It should fulfill that most essential of Catholic social justice principles, that this is generally good. It's a good thing for all of society. We're very committed to that. In fact, Kathleen mentioned that she helped us launch our Tucson campus program. We have nearly 100 students in that campus now. These are students who probably would not go to college. These are poor Hispanic immigrant families that don't have the means. We're offering them a very low-cost business education, and they're loving it. I was sharing with Kathleen before we started our program that when I speak to the students on our Tucson campus, and I ask them, well, what do you like about the program? The answers they give us are exactly the same answers I'm hearing from our Washington campus students. I met my best friends here. They treat me like family. They give me very personalized attention. They're always, all qualities, the human qualities that you want to impart to students. That sort of hard to put your finger on, not quantifiable. Those qualities, and those are important, I think, at a university and a college. And then we're actively exploring another model right now called the Come to Believe Network, which was founded at Loyola Chicago, called the Arupe College, which tries to take students who would not be admissible into a typical 4-year college. So you admit them into a 2-year program, and the graduation rate there is about 55-60%, where the AA degree graduation rate is more typically 10 or 15%. And then a lot of these students will go on and get a 4-year degree. So just like Kathleen's suggesting, we're engaged in these experiments to broaden the umbrella of higher ed. But let's talk about college and university. Let's talk about what the real purpose of a university is. So career success is not the only, and I would say it's not even the primary reason to have a university or college. That's not why you go to college or university. You don't go to get a $100,000 a year job. You go to get educated. You go to become educated. You go to become a citizen of the country who can function well in our society and who understands the arc of history and our culture and our society, and you can function well in it. That's why you go to college. Now, career success is a very nice and happy byproduct. And we're very pleased that 96% of our students are well placed in their career and their job or graduate school, 6 months after graduation. But again, I would argue, if you go back and ask John Henry Newman, well, what's the reason we have universities? If you ask Thomas Aquinas, who helped found one of the first universities, why do we have a university? It's to educate people. So what is education? Well, to educate means to lead out. Okay, so where are we leading people out to? I would argue it's not for career success, it's for life success. It's to be happy and fulfilled in your life. And Kathleen's colleague at Harvard, Tyler Vanderwill, has studied very carefully, what does it mean to be happy and fulfilled and to flourish in your life? And I'll give you 2 really important determinants of success and happiness in life: religiosity and a stable marriage. Tyler will tell you, boy, you got those 2 things, you've almost got it completely made. And then I would argue that the whole purpose of a university is to be unified by a single idea. So when Harvard was founded in 1636, what was the mission statement of Harvard College? Well, it was to put Jesus Christ as the foundation of everything, because he is the way, the truth, and the life. And if you don't have that as the foundation, you don't have a university. So all these things we call universities in America, they're not universities. They're what Alistair McIntyre calls multiversities. They're not universities. Go read his book. It's a fantastic book. And then Blessed Basil Moreau, I love to quote this, the founder of Congregation of Holy Cross. Education is the art of bringing a young person to completion. So what does it mean to be completed? It means that we haven't just skilled you up to get a job. It doesn't mean that we've physically trained you to be strong, and have bodily integrity. It doesn't mean that we've helped you psychologically not to have suicidal ideation or to be fearful or to be depressed. It means we've educated the whole person, and you've got it all. You've got intellectual formation, you've got psychological formation, spiritual, you've got the whole thing. That's what it means to be educated. And that's why I'm so passionate about the importance of colleges and universities, because I fear that when we go down this path of alternative education, alternative training, where you get a AWS, certificate, that you're not getting all of that. You're getting a slice of it. So if young people don't have a chance to go and mature socially and spiritually in college, where are they going to do it? When are they going to do it? Okay. So who needs college? I guess I've said a lot of this. I would say that we've thought very carefully about our core curriculum, and we're in the process of sort of reinventing it. And again, I feel so firmly that the whole purpose of a college or a university education is to help people fully discover the truth about themselves. And, John Paul says in, Vatican II said in Gaudium et Spes, and John Paul probably wrote it, that a human person cannot know who they are apart from Jesus Christ. If you don't know the Lord, you can't know who you are. And this is why I think it's just so important to help people fully discover themselves at a university by having that be the foundation of our education. So how do you help people fully discover Jesus Christ? Well, you help them discover, as Kathleen said, the good, the true, the beautiful. I gave a lecture last night at the Josephinum in Columbus on beauty and science. If you can find beauty and truth and goodness and unity in our cultural arc, if you can find it in literature, if you can find it in painting, if you can find it in poetry, if you can find it in music, yes, even if you can find it in science and technology, as I tried to help them understand last night, then you can find it everywhere, and you will discover the truth about yourself and the truth about your life. And so those are just a few thoughts, but let's go back to the point. We do need to take care of these 62% of students who aren't making it through college or university. So I think a really good question maybe for tonight, it was, well, why is that? Why are 62% of all Americans being failed by college and by university? And if you go look at the completion rates for colleges and universities, community colleges, four-year colleges, graduate schools, the whole bit, they're all over the map. I know the university that I was at a few years ago that has their home in South Bend, Indiana. Their completion rate, it's well over 90%. But why is that? Because they take the top 2 to 3% of all students. Well, if you take the very best students in the country, what you have to do is get out of their way in order for them to succeed. Now, there's a lot of great formation that goes on there too, but the trick is for some of the students that Kathleen was talking about. Patrick, I believe. Patrick didn't do very well in high school. Patrick maybe wasn't really well prepared to go to a four-year school. He didn't have a good foundation in the 3 R's or whatever. So what do we do for the Patricks of the world? What do we do for the young man that grows up in a mining town in Kentucky or West Virginia? What do we do for J.D. Vance wrote about hillbilly elegy. What do we do for the hillbillies? What do we do for people who are not ready for college? How do we deliver a core curriculum to them? How do we help them discover the truth about themselves? I think that's a great question. It's an important question. But I don't think the answer is an AWS certificate. I think the answer is somehow to skill them up with some cultural knowledge and cultural awareness and help them begin to discover themselves, ask the ultimate questions about their lives. I think that's a better answer. But I'm gonna stop there. I know Mitch has some Q&A for us, but thank you for listening.
Both come up here. Well, that is a great place to kick off this conversation with all of you here in the room. I gave them a couple questions in advance that I'm going to ditch entirely because so you guys are totally ready for this, I'm sure. Because that was, I think, a really great place for us to begin a conversation here about the both and nature of what we're dealing with here, how to deal with these questions. So I'll start with a question that I'll pose to Kathleen and a slightly different one to President Kilpatrick. For Kathleen, we've a big part of the element here that President Kilpatrick talked about was that in the project of trying to take the college degree and break it up into its parts, the argument here is that the sum is greater than the parts. That the sum of that full experience of both getting the skill set and developing that skill wallet that you talk about, which is a really brilliant idea when you guys all go out there and buy and read the book to learn about the skill wallet. But that comes with an additional aspect of both formation in soul, in network with people. So what does it look like for, in our context, the ability for, particularly Catholic colleges to be offering that sum as greater than the parts as maybe one of the ways it distinguishes itself from a secular university that is both offering all of those parts next to each other, but not with the cohesive element that Harvard used to offer, for example. We'll start there.
Yeah, well, I would say that for Catholic colleges, I think one of the challenges is to think about, can you unbundle the degree in a way that takes affordability off the table, and still hold on to the cohort and the beauty and the formation that you want to create? Because the number one reason people turn away from a degree is not because they think maybe they think an AWS certification is cooler, but it's really about affordability or a desire or need for family circumstance to get right to work. And so in the book, I propose one, core design criteria as this idea of a step ladder. And so if college could be more of a step ladder where you're coming in and out of college to gain the pieces that you need to build earnings power. I think Catholic colleges could think of it differently to say, can you come in and out of college if affordability is an issue to build formation power?
Right.
I know that's hard because what colleges struggle with is the general education and liberal arts part of college, right? It's the least specific. It's the harder to certify. We don't really have assessments that you could break them apart. It's also, let's face it, it's the cash cow, right? It's the part that if you can get them to stay for 4 years, that's how your funding model is organized. So, when I've tried to help colleges break apart the, let's call it the college experience part of college, it's hard to do because students don't sign up for it because they're like, what job does this get me?
Yeah.
So it's a total, I agree with everything you say. The unintended consequences of moving to just-in-time learning and these, micro pathways that get you to the next job and the next job, the thing that gets left behind is exactly what you're talking about.
Right. I think that there actually is a way to do the step ladder. Northeastern pioneered it many years ago. It's called co-op model.
Right.
And the co-op model is a step ladder model. And we've actually talked about, because we have students every year who want to come to Catholic University of America, and they say, our family just can't afford it. We have 7 kids, and this is our 3rd one in college. And even though you've given us an 80% tuition discount, it's not enough. And so we have to make a decision. And so we've looked at, well, how can we make it more affordable for exactly the families that we want to serve? These are great Catholic families. They're really what we have is what they want. And so we've looked at 3 different things. We've looked at a Catholic University version of co-op, and I think we're going to go ahead and pilot that.
Wow.
And see if it works.
That's very cool.
And then the key, of course, is finding the corporations here in the area where they could do the co-op. A second is ROTC. More and more students who struggle to be ROTC, the military prep in college But a third way is what I call corporate ROTC. So corporations really want a diverse workforce. They want great students. And they know that our students are fantastic because they're well-formed. They're what I call unentitled. They have great work ethic. They're great young people. And so if the military can do that, why can't corporations do that? And we've begun to pilot that with hospitals. So we have a great nursing program, and we partnered with some hospitals, and they are helping to pay the tuition of the students in exchange for the students spending 3 or 4 years at the hospital serving as a nurse. So those are just a few ideas of this, of how you can make college more affordable for families that are worried about affording it. But what I would tell you is that the average cumulative 4-year debt in America for a private, not-for-profit university is $37,000. The average cost of a new car last year was $48,000. Is the price of a college education worth a little bit less than the price of a new car? I would say so. Looking at the value proposition. So I think, and this is the whole point about, is college really unaffordable? Everyone discounts their tuition. Notre Dame discounts their tuition 65% on average, but they pay for the other 65% with a $20 billion endowment. So, if we had a $20 billion endowment, we would give our education away too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the other big thing is childcare, and a lot of students, something like 1 out of 4 women enrolled in community college is a single mom. And so that's, what we're seeing is a time poverty issue is, it's not just the financial barriers, but the time poverty barriers where, those kinds of folks just can't, they can't go to class, they have to work. And something like 60% of students work while they're in college. And so, recognizing those, barriers and realities for families so that we can have workarounds to the idea that you get driven off in the family SUV and dropped off for 4 years at college. That's just not the reality of most students or learners and earners in today's world. And so that's part of what I'm trying to keep top of mind is, okay, yes, I think everything you're describing sounds great, but what about all these other people as well?
That's one question of you, President Kilpatrick, for you to respond to, and then open it up to the group here. The flip side of this coin, you talk about the relatively low cost of $37,000 to get a university degree. A lot of the people in this room and around the country, Catholics, are worried about not only the cost, but am I paying $37,000 or $37,000 a year to send my child off to be uneducated and the good and the true and the beautiful? And what are the limiting principles behind that sort of college experience that I could get, and making the decision about what universities I should consider that could be providing a skills-based education, but also that general formational experience, but cost a lot of money and also could reverse a lot of the good I'm doing while maybe not even providing those sorts of skills. So what should be guiding Catholics as they think through the sorts of places that they could send their children, both for a university experience or for a both and experience, if it's not all together in one place?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of dialogue about this just very recently. What is happening at the majority of our college campuses and university campuses in terms of the opinions and the cultural leanings of a lot of those places, and is there really freedom of expression? Are we hearing the full story at a lot of places? And what are the values and the principles that guide the mission of that university? Now, for Catholic colleges and universities, there are rating agencies,
Yeah.
Like the Newman Guide, which, and my hat's off to Patrick Riley. I mean, he was very courageous for doing what he did several years ago. It didn't win him a lot of friends amongst most of the Catholic colleges and universities in the country, but he was, he was courageous to stand up and say, look, if you support abortion, or if you support what the Holy Father calls toxic gender ideology at these Catholic colleges and universities, are you really Catholic? I mean, or are you not? And so he was bold enough to do that. So there are ways that you can learn about, well, what happens at Catholic University or University of Dallas or Belmont Abbey, or you can learn about it. You just have to go look.
Yeah, and could I just add that that's what first got me interested in doing this discussion, was looking at how some of the doctrinally sound Catholic colleges, their enrollment is increasing markedly. And so, what does that say to you in terms of what families are looking for, right? They're looking for a community, that longing to belong in a Catholic community that is, in keeping with, the upbringing of the families. And those are the ones that are doing the best, right? And I will say that something like a college is closing every week in 2024. That was the stat that I saw. And there were a couple of Catholic colleges, are in that list, but they tend to be small privates, enrollment less than 500, and maybe not of the type that would get that Newman rating, for example. And that's been really interesting to watch. The only other group of colleges that's doing that well in terms of a subsector, in terms of enrollment right now, are HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. And I think just for different reasons, but the same idea of a value proposition of finding your people and your heritage, et cetera. Those are the colleges that are doing well.
I think it's also important to recognize that there are two things. Well, there are more than two things. There are multiple things happening at the same time. So the financial strain that all colleges and universities are under right now is largely being driven by inflation and demographics. And so small schools are going to struggle because they don't have any economy of scale. So that's irrespective of whether they're faithfully Catholic or secular or HBCUs or whatever. If you're small, if you're below a certain size, you're in big trouble right now, unless you have a big endowment. So that is a factor. This other factor, belonging, is a really important factor. More and more people, they want their young people to have this experience of feeling like, wow, these are my people. I feel like I really belong here. And I feel like, and one of the things we like about our university is that, yes, we have that cohort of belonging, but we also have the here comes everybody. We have a little of both. And so it's an opportunity for not only a devout or a faithful Catholic to experience their own population, but it's also an opportunity to be in the real world. And that's important too.
We've got time for a few questions here. First one in the back there. Angelica's coming with a mic for you right out the back door.
Thank you. You talk about You talk about education as a public good, but it seems that the way, for me, higher education there's not enough accountability. Like on a K through 12 level there is, but on a public and private Catholic level, a lot of public universities like Rutgers or Penn State, it's hard to get their line-by-line budgets, or part of their governing boards are not even appointed by the public. And with most Catholic schools, I mean, the idea that an institution receives public funding is truly, if they receive a public funding, well, you can't survive without it. The idea that it's a truly private institution is absurd. So how do you bring more public accountability? I mean, one of the ideas I would love, if you're a private institution like Catholic University and you accept public money, you got to provide your line-by-line budget to the public, because you're throwing numbers out, but without concrete numbers and the budgets, it's poor public investment, and it's a high level of ignorance. So how do you bring that accountability to the American taxpayer?
So every university in America, every university, private, public, otherwise, has to publish audited financial statements every year, and those are available to the public. So you can go see my line-by-line budget and my audited financial statements, which are published every year. The other thing we have to do is the federal government now has this return on investment by degree program. That's something that just got implemented a couple of years ago. So there actually is public accountability for every university in America.
Are the salaries of every employee? Are the salaries of every employee of Catholic University?
No.
So I would have no trouble then if the Catholic can't survive without public money. And I'm picking a Catholic. Could be Manhattan College now is in trouble. If the institution cannot survive without public money, then it's absurd to think that it's a truly private act. If American taxpayers, and this goes to public schools too, because the governing boards are not responsive to public universities, to their constituencies, like K-12 public schools are. So if a Catholic university or Manhattan College or Notre Dame or St. Peter's in New Jersey, if they need that money, then then it's not far-fetched to expect the public taxpayer to know a line-by-line budget. And if it doesn't work out, Grove City College in the early 80s said, we don't like Title IX, we're going to go completely private and not accept public money. But the idea that there is accountability to the taxpayer without a line-by-line budget, I think is patently absurd.
Hi, I thought you both did a great job. It was a great presentation. I actually sort of lean toward where Kathleen is on, I don't think college is for every student, but there's a big pressure to have your children go to college. My father had an associate's degree in art, commercial art, and he opened his own business. My mother was a secretary, did secretarial school, and was a top secretary for Bell Laboratories. But then they were able to make a life together. I don't think that's as easy to do today. So that's the difficulty, because the prestige factor comes into play, and you kind of tell your children you have to get that degree. So I just wonder how associate degrees or additional kind of training, because it's very rare to be 18 years old and come out with all those certifications. So is there something kind of in between that might be, a solution for those kids that maybe are not really gifted for academic life, but really need something more than just a high school degree?
Well, I argue that the lines between what used to be called blue-collar jobs and white-collar jobs are blurring. And, maybe manufacturing is where it kind of comes through the clearest, where you can see how even the person who is going to trade school and is maybe getting certificates needs the algebra or needs the math or needs the sort of the engineering basics that used to be kind of reserved for white collar jobs. And in that blurring, what's happening is that the training, the high schools now are really talking about trying to elevate what's called career and technical education, what used to be called like VOTech. And when I went to school in Northern Virginia, public high school, it was auto shop or cosmetology, and your friends like disappeared in 10th grade, never to be seen again if they weren't on the college track, right? It was like the movie Grease, right? Well, now, I mean, this guy Patrick, for example, was opting in as electives to get his certifications, and the high schools. I profile several places where the high schools are really trying to think about CTE for all, so that everybody has exposure to that, so that you could be job ready coming out of high school, but you could also go on. And that's, I think that the philosophy behind that is this idea that we don't really have maybe we do in some regards, but we don't have the same dividing line between blue collar jobs, where you went to the factory or the mines, right, or the auto shop, and, take the elevator to the top floor and hope to become an executive, right? There's not that bifurcation anymore.
Time for two more questions, 1 and 2. Let's take them together, and then they can answer them together.
So thanks a lot to both of you. I can just speak up. So thanks a lot for both of you. My question is, I know when I was choosing colleges, I wanted a place that had kind of the comprehensive moral, spiritual, intellectual formation that you talked about. But I'm curious if you think colleges are the only actors that could provide that. And if there are maybe other things in society that could give students and people that same thing.
Let's take the next question.
We probably could both take that one. I mean, are you
Go
going to get both
ahead.
questions right?
Yeah, ask them both, and then we'll answer them both.
I have one
Great.
idea.
Well,
No.
first of all, thank you very much for a wonderful talk, and I appreciate both your points of view. My question is about this distinction between the liberal arts and the servile arts, coming from our classical heritage. College's genesis was in the liberal arts for those who basically could afford to live as landed gentry. And as college has expanded and become more financially driven, it has tried to recruit people who otherwise would have just gone into the servile arts.
Right.
And I think that largely colleges, I went to the University of Virginia, I would cite this as an example, are doing both of them, but both very poorly. Do you think that colleges need to choose one or the other in order to find affordable things for people who need jobs, or human formation for people who can afford to live as landed gentry? Is there some middle ground, or is it a choice that needs to be made?
Interesting.
Two related questions there, yeah.
Yeah, so, first of all, can we get moral formation outside of a university? Sure, of course. This is what parishes used to do so well, and parish families and church families. They used to. We live in a different universe now. But small Christian community, the kinds of civic associations that are centered around our faith, that have survived in this country for centuries and that will go on for many more centuries. There's plenty of places where you can go get that kind of formation, but they don't serve tens of millions of people. And to your point about the liberal and servile arts, originally they were together. It was the trivium and quadrivium. And, the way Boethius and Cassiodorus and Augustine and Marco Varro set up the liberal arts in the medieval schools, they were supposed to be together. And I would argue we separate them at our own peril, because the liberal arts, grammar, rhetoric, logic, are the foundation stones of all learning. What you should try to learn at a college or a university is how to use all the powers of your intellect. And that's what an education is about. It's about empowering you to be all you can be intellectually. And then the servile arts is how to apply that. But in the original schools, the medieval cathedral schools, they were together. They were all together.
So on your question about can formation happen outside of a college, I started getting calls, interestingly, when we were doing the work with Catholic University, and people heard that this was my secular nonprofit, but they heard we were doing work with Catholic University. They assumed we were Catholic friendly, and so we started getting calls from organizations. And I can't remember, there was one in Texas, which basically was kind of like the Leonine Fellow, like it was a professional association for Catholics, and they wanted to work with us to create basically micro-credentials around formation topics. And we ended up not taking the work on, but it sort of showed us some ideas, and would love to kind of start that conversation with others around are there ways for people to feel like they're actually getting, badged is probably too technical, too parochial of a word, but in the idea of experiences and cohorts that could happen, with pilgrimages, with community service. There are all kinds of ways that people do this, like for high school students and work camps. And there's also the example that one of the groups that called us was the Harmel Work Colleges that's now starting up in Michigan, they were creating for the survey, they were doing applied a college experience with dormitories for young men who wanted to go into the trades but wanted to be in Catholic community. And I think they're up and running. And there's also one at Steubenville, the St. Joseph the Worker Academy has started up recently. And they are, in fact, we invited them to come be part of this panel today, but they're too busy taking on new students. Apparently, they couldn't come down. But I mean, those are kind of exciting opportunities to me, and hopefully it speak to both questions.
Please join me in thanking our panelists.
This is lovely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
thank you.
enjoyed it.
The book is called Who Needs College Anymore? It is available in fine bookstores all around you. Kathleen will be out there ready to sign books for those of you who would like to purchase a copy.